Hey there, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 244 is titled Hop Aboard with the Haynes Sales Team.
Founded in Boston, Massachusetts in 1888, the Wm.S. Haynes Company has been striving to make the finest flutes for 135 years and is the oldest continually manufacturing flute company in the world. The legendary Haynes sound is that of depth, sweetness, and projection. This unparalleled tone, combined with a precise mechanism and scale, brings a personal and distinctive feeling to the player, a profound connection that is unmistakably Haynes. The company's dedication to the Boston tradition of flute making and meeting the demands of the modern flutist is carried through every instrument which bears the iconic Haynes monogram. From the gifted middle schooler to the talented high school student, from the aspiring professional player to the skillful and enthusiastic amateur, from the teaching studio to the international stage. The lineup of Amadeus, Q-Series, and custom handmade flutes offers a Haynes flute for every player. To learn more, visit our website at wmshaynes.com or haynesflutes.com. That works as well.
It's so fun. Usually, you never know how these episode shows start off, but because now we are all friends, we can just segue beautifully into a great conversation where I get to pick y'all's brain. And I'm super excited because not only have Korinne and I cultivated this relationship year after year and just getting to know her that much better, I'm blessed beyond measure. But now she's bringing in her colleagues and her friends, Blair and Gareth, to this conversation. And the fact that now I have these two new friends in my orbit, I'm going to be blessed that much more. And I know the listeners will as well. So thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And this is new content, new topics that I have not brought to the 360ers orbit and through their earbuds at all. I have never talked with a sales team through a flute maker company before. And so to get fresh perspectives and ideas and content to the 360ers is tremendous. So again, thanks for being here. And what I would like to do is, because we have 3 people, and that's tremendous. We usually have a one-on-one conversation, but today we have a group conversation. I will do my very best to pass the baton and say, hey, Blair, what do you think? Things like that. So I think it's great to start off first with you guys introducing yourselves to the listeners and just giving us your flute musical background and anything that you would like to share. So if you want to, Blair, you can start us off if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, so I went to the University of Wyoming and got a bachelor's in music education. I come from a musical family, so it's not any great surprise that I ended up studying it and being in the industry. And then during my student teaching, I knew that public schools teaching wasn't really where my heart was. It was fine and I could have been good at it, but it wasn't quite the thing that was like, I got to go pursue that, you know? So I knew I wanted to go to grad school and, buy a little more time and sort of figure something out there. So I went to the University of South Carolina in Columbia and got a master's dual degree in flute performance and community engagement. And that's sort of a field that's, really growing in the world now. And there are more and more certificates and more degree programs around this sort of arts entrepreneurship, music innovation, sort of everything besides how well can you play the instrument. And that gave me a ton of new doors and skills and things there. And then after the master's, I again needed just a little more time. So I started the doctorate, but I knew academia is not where my heart's at either. And I knew that going in. So I knew it was kind of just wait until the right train comes along. And then I knew Korinne actually tangentially because she'll tell you about this, but she did her grad work at South Carolina also a few years ahead of me. We didn't overlap, but just because the industry is small and our teacher was really good at putting people in contact, I knew her, and we were sort of catching up one day at the start of my doctoral semester, the first semester there, and she floated this Haynes job, this sales and customer service sort of hybrid world at the shop in Massachusetts. And the year had just started at that point. So I kind of promptly forgot about it because I was like, the year started. I'm happy. I'm doing the thing. And then the more I thought about it, the more I came back to it, I was like, whoa, that's actually kind of a nice synthesis of everything I've learned and everything that I'm good at and everything that I like doing. So I threw my name in the hat, and then it quickly became, hi, we want you on board. Can you leave school and come join the team at Haynes? And that was just over a year ago. Actually, I just passed a year, and I haven't looked back. I haven't missed academia really at all. It's been just an absolute treat and a joy to get to be part of this team and go to work with a bunch of flute nerds every day.
I love that. Oh my goodness, Blair, thank you so much for describing that beautiful backstory. And I've never heard anyone describe this before in the sense of waiting for the train. I've heard people say like they were noticing the breadcrumbs, but I like your analogy of waiting for the train. So I know what you mean, but can you elaborate a little bit more? Because you may or may not know, a lot of 360-ness is looking at the flutist from all these different angles, the artist, the human, and the career go-getter. So within the career go-getting umbrella, a lot of 360ers will come to me and say, I know academia is not for me. I know being a band director is not for me. I want to have and build those creative and financial opportunities, but I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what to do. And I empathize with them because a lot of my career pivoted into this untraditional path that ended up not being in academia either. So going back to your journey, Blair, like, how did you know what train to jump on? Go for it. You get it.
Yeah, I don't think you ever know what train to jump on. I think you just jump on a train and see where it goes.
Okay.
And if it doesn't work, there's another train passing in another direction and you hop on that train. So,
okay.
You look at degrees, like I did the music ed degree. That's a train. And then I hopped on the master's train, and then I hopped on the doctoral train. So I think in all honesty, it's throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And then learning from what sticks on the wall.
There are more trains when you're as talented as Blair is. That's the thing. It's a busier station. That's the thing. So you can have these opportunities to come up. But, that's
Gareth is quite kind. But no, it was really, for me, it was looking at what I learned in my master's, which was really, really personal to me and very much I'm figuring out my skill set. And this is what Blair individually is good at, not just this is what a flutist is good at, but like Blair the flutist and Blair the musician, what am I good at? And then it was really just keeping those core things in mind as job opportunities came up. So there were a few more that I applied for before the Haynes thing that, again, just kind of weren't the right fit and therefore didn't work out. Either I wasn't really into it or I wasn't fully qualified for it. But it was just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. And eventually, this Haynes thing came along and I was qualified. I was good enough for it. It's, like I said, a synthesis of everything that I think I'm good at and enjoy. And that was the right train. So yeah, you never really know what train to jump on. Just pick a train, jump on it.
I love that. Not that we are, because Korinne and Gareth have so much more value to bring to this conversation, but we could literally stop the episode right there. Only because I have never heard a guest talk about waiting for that train and then, hey, there's multiple trains. And what I'm hearing you say too is like being flexible, being adaptable, and just being courageous to say, hey, I'm on this train. I'm trying out this thing. Oh, I come to find out I'm not really suited for this train. I'm going to jump ship and I'm going to try this out. And then until you find that like magical space where like, hey, like what you said, Blair, like my skill sets, my individual skill sets for Blair fitting that job. And then you're passionate about it. You get paid to do it. And all of those elements come together. Then it's just like kisses chef, mwah, like, perfecto.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to just as a last piece, to keep in mind that if you hop off of one train, it's not because you're a failure. It's just because something else is a better fit. I think we get really wrapped up in our heads sometimes and think, oh, this didn't work out. It must be because of me. It must be that something's wrong with me or my skills. No, it just means it wasn't the right fit for everybody.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. So speaking of jumping from train to train, we're going to jump to Korinne's train and hear about her journey. Feel free to talk about your flute background and all that jazz, Korinne.
Sure. It's a little similar to Blair's. I think a lot of us flutists, we talk about our education and where we went to school. And he already told you that I did 2 grad degrees at the University of South Carolina. I did my undergrad in music education. Also, very similar story, Blair. I didn't realize that you student taught and realized that wasn't the right track for you. That was the same for me. I was a junior in college and I had to teach 4th grade trumpet lessons. And I'm like, oh no, this isn't going to work. But I have to say, and I switched trains and I went and did a flute performance degree, 2 of them. And at the time, during my doctoral work, I was really involved with the up and coming entrepreneurship program that was happening at the University of South Carolina, which now has several degrees. And like Blair said, he did a community engagement degree, which they didn't have when I was there, but I studied under David Cutler. So we'll give him a quick shout out. He's very well known in the music entrepreneurship world, but he made me look at education differently. And did I want to really teach flute? And do I want to perform? And what kind of lifestyle and living is that going to give me, my husband, and my 1-year-old child at the time? How I got into the industry was very much kind of right place, right time. So there's a lot of luck, but also I was really ready. I had all my materials ready to go. I met the sales manager of Eastman Music Company when I was in my master's degree. He came to try and sell Haynes flutes to the studio. And he walked into my lesson and interrupted our lesson and asked us to go out to lunch. And I got to know him. And he said, will you send me your resume and your recordings? I'd like to hire you to come and do some master classes down in Florida and various parts of the Southeast Territory. So I sent it to him and we just stayed in touch. And he eventually hired me to do some master classes and we became good friends and we kept that relationship for several years. I went and I finished my doctorate at South Carolina and he called me one day. It was probably 5 months before I graduated with my DMA. And he said, Korinne, what are you going to do? You have your DMA, you have a 1-year-old, you don't have a full-time job. What are you going to do? And I said, well, what all musicians do, right? We somehow figure it out. We put it together. I was auditioning regularly. I was playing with local orchestras. I had a full-time teaching studio. I was just making ends meet, right? And so he said, I want you to apply for this job. I know you're from Buffalo, New York. It's in the Northeast, and it's basically my job with Eastman Music Company, but in that territory. And I said, I don't know anything about selling musical instruments. I said, my retail experience was Blockbuster Video. That's the extent of my retail experience in sales. So anyway, I applied for it and I ended up getting it. We won't go through the whole story, but I was up against mostly men. It's a male-dominated industry, and that's still changing today. You see a lot of females in our positions in the flute world, but in the larger music industry, it's still very male-dominated. So I was up against a lot of men that had been in the industry for 20, 30 years. And I think what I really love about Eastman is they just have a fresh outlook on life, and what they're not looking for necessarily experience all the time. They're looking for the right person, and that may mean the right personality. Blair was talking about being adaptable and versatile and somebody that can just pick up on things pretty quickly and also be a self-starter. And those are real attributes that I brought to that job. And that interview. So they hired me. I moved out to California and I worked remotely from California for a year. And then I moved back to the Northeast. During COVID, I was offered the job here at Haynes. So for those of you that don't know, Eastman Music Company owns the Wm.S. Haynes Flute Company. And so when I was the sales rep for Eastman, I worked there for 6 years and I sold a lot of Haynes flutes and I loved it because I was a flutist and that was great. And then they offered me the job at Haynes and I gratefully accepted. And I did those 2 jobs for all throughout COVID. And then they said, okay, Korinne, you can go back to one job. Which one would you like? And I said, I'll stay with Haynes. So I've been gainfully employed with Eastman for what will be 8 years in August. And I've been really happy on this ride. I've been really grateful.
Oh, that's amazing. And something that you said, Korinne, piggybacks off of what Blair was saying earlier, and that's people. it sounds like you guys really emphasize the fact of, I'm using this term very loosely, networking. And it's more or less building relationships. And what Blair was saying was like his relationship with you. You were able to say, hey, what are you doing? And we have a position and dot, dot, dot. And same for you and for your journey, Korinne, of, somebody seeking you out, a mentor seeking you out and saying, hey, what are you doing post DMA? And it all boils to, and this is one of my soapboxes through 360 as well, and that's people and building relationships from this very genuine and authentic place. So do you have any advice, Korinne, since you hinted at it, do you have any advice when it comes to, and again, I'm using this term very loosely, networking, because you do such a fantastic job. This is something I admire about you, a quality that you possess. You really put people first. How I saw you interact at Team EA and the other flute festivals. You really seek people out, and I commend you on that.
Oh, thank you. I think we're very lucky and in that we work for a company that makes really good flutes, it's not necessarily us pushing a product. It's really about us getting to know the people. And that is what honestly sells our instruments. I really believe it's the people, it's those relationships. And how do I cultivate those, or how do I get those relationships? I think Blair kind of touched at this, just saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way, especially when you're in those college years, not yet settled in a position. I encourage people to not be picky. Yes, there's this whole, we want to be balanced in our life and our work and, not be too overstressed. But I think it's really important to be saying yes to everything that comes your way in the beginning, because you never know what opportunity you might miss out on, or a person that you might meet along. And even if it's a gig that you're not getting paid for, go and do it. You don't know who's going to be sitting next to you that may offer you that job in a year or 2 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, very beautifully said. Absolutely love it. And Mr. Gareth, can you talk about your background and all of that as well? I can't wait to hear about your journey.
So I studied in London. I'm Irish from Belfast, Northern Ireland. And so I studied in London at the Guildhall School. And straight after that, I went into the UK equivalent of New World Symphonies, this sort of youth symphony orchestra. So it was a 1-year contract, 90 concerts, world premieres, ballets, operas, tours, all that sort of stuff. And during that year, I was like, okay, this is fun, but I don't think I want to do this all the time. Which was because basically my entire life had been geared to going to get an orchestral position since I was about 16. That was it. That was what I wanted to do. And then once I said I had this taste of it, I was like, I enjoy the concerts, but I was just like, I don't think I can do this all the time. It just seems a little bit limiting, and I feel like I'm not being stretched enough, and I feel like I want to do more things. So that was a bit of a crisis, to be honest, that I had when I was about 25. So, and then it's literally because Korinne just said, this idea of saying yes to everything, which is exactly what I did. I said yes to everything. So whether it was working with a musical foundation in London or working with a kids flute playing charity, Flute-wise, which I became heavily involved in the UK, starting to compose and arrange music, obviously teaching at various different levels, still playing in orchestra, still do every so often. But it's funny, because in the last 2 weeks, if I give you a rundown, so today I had a recording session for a Sony video game, which is being released in a few months. That was this afternoon. Yesterday, I was in Calais, sitting on the jury for a flute competition in the morning and giving a masterclass there in the afternoon. Last week, I gave the world premiere of a brand new composition that I just written in Pittsburgh, and that was after a week of crazy busy activity, doing classes and number of concerts, and that's kind of my existence. I don't really stop, and I don't really have the desire to stop either, which is it's sometimes difficult, I guess. But yeah, I just generally don't stop because I've got so many things going on all the time. And my journey towards Haynes came just from, I tried Haynes because Haynes wasn't a huge thing here in Europe for really decades. Just wasn't really a thing. I first tried Haynes in 2007, wasn't that impressed. 2009, okay. 2011, I was like, you have my attention. And in 2012, I was like, okay, I need one of these. I absolutely need one of these flutes. And so that's what sort of drew me towards, it was just the instruments. And I had noticed the guys coming over from Boston 4, 5, 6 times a year for all these conventions. And I was like, this must be expensive. I'm sure I could, because I want one of these flutes, so I'm sure I could work. And as well, because while I was at the Guildhall, I was also put through an arts and business pairing with Deutsche Bank. So I had a mentorship for a year, which was super useful. And also my parents have been in retail since I was a kid. They had toy shops ever since I was a kid. So sort of the entrepreneurial aspect has sort of been in the blood somewhat. And then it's funny because people say networking, but it's just like, it's just literally endless, bottomless enthusiasm for literally everything to do with the flute. I mean, it's just kind of a sickness, to be honest. I own just far too many flutes. I mean, literally like 40 I've got in the house. And I keep wanting to have more, lots of, from every single country. And, I've got these weird glissando head joints and, I bought a pair of beautiful Haynes gold flutes. And yeah, so I just literally have a bottomless enthusiasm for everything to do with the flute. It's a completely sort of flute-centered existence that I have. And I just love it.
That's amazing. I did not know that you said it was a toy shop. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, my folks had toy shops in Northern Ireland. Yeah, it was like a little chain. They're out of that business now, and actually it's since grown to be a kind of a big chain. In fact, it's all over the UK now as well. But yeah, that was so my folks were in the toy industry, which is amusing. Whenever you have relatives talking very seriously about them, Polly Pockets are doing very well. Having these really sort of these deep conversations about little Miss Piggy Nose is that's a real killer seller. These sort of these funny conversations, but that's the background. But it's just I always sort of say that there's nothing about the flute that if I don't already know it, I'm not desperately keen to know. I'm just like, tell me about it, because I find it endlessly fascinating. So it's just like literal flute nerd, but I don't know, it is this sort of comes from a place of genuine, authentic enthusiasm for all things flute.
And that's why Gareth oversees our social media platforms, so he can flute nerd out.
Well, because I inherited it, and Haynes, it feels like it had the image of the sort of the elder statesman of the flute world, quite traditional, quite a little bit distant, perhaps. But it was whenever I met everybody. I remember having this moment whenever I first went to the workshop in Acton, and I was surrounded by these genius experts, and I was just like, "This is awesome! Everybody here, they're all absolutely top of their field. This is amazing. I love this." So I really remember that moment very well. But also I remember sort of thinking, this doesn't feel stuffy at all. This feels like the most welcoming. It's just that's the environment, and because sort of I think it was Stephen Finlay really sort of set the tone of just sort of this sort of generous, welcoming. He would sort of say sort of a welcoming resonance that's how he would describe Haynes, welcoming resonance. And I was just like, well, let's give that a voice. And so now, I deliberately, I want to interact with people on their social medias in a friendly, enthusiastic way. Because I know the way people feel about their flutes, and likewise, if anyone, because it's a manufacturing thing, it's a manufacturing industry. Therefore, sometimes things go wrong, and how you manage that is just with the same. It's like we understand, we understand the situation, and we're going to help. And so I think that's also the thing, because flutes are pieces of light engineering, and they're super complex, and I sort of think that the way people feel about them, that they are extensions of their body, so they're super important. And so and I think everybody recognizes that, and I think certainly everyone in this screen, we're all like on board with that. There's no like, oh, flute nerds. Everyone's like, yeah, flute nerds, great.
Yeah. I mean, you heard me geeking out about flute podcasts before we hit record. I mean, you couldn't shut me up. And it was just like, yeah, flute geeking out, flute nerding. I'm all for it. And you do a fantastic job, Gareth, through social media, bringing that resonance, that voice of Haynes through the different platforms. So I really respect the work that you do because you do a fantastic job. The graphics and how you bring in text and how it catches the eye and the coloring. Oh my goodness, like bravo. It's really beautiful work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you hinted at it, Gareth, and you were talking about like a portion of your job and what it entails. Can you give us a little bit more of some specifics to your job? Like what other aspects of your job would you like to share with the listeners? Because I just want to highlight each of your guys' roles. So again, if there's a 360 listener out there who's like, academia is not for me, teaching the little ones is not for me, maybe social media management or sales is for me, they get a better understanding of what you do on a day-to-day or month-to-month regimen so that way they can get excited and see if it's a good fit for them. Are you a flutist frustrated that your instrument doesn't accurately represent your artistic voice? We hear you. Not owning an instrument that will showcase your musical abilities and let your creative voice shine through can be frustrating. Let us help you change that. At the Korinne Smith Music Company, we have a team of flute specialists who have been working in the industry for decades, and they have the knowledge and the skill to help you find your dream instrument. They have a wide selection of piccolos, flutes, low flutes, and head joints to match your creative needs. To help you find your perfect instrument, call the Flute Shop at 972-985-2662 to schedule your flute trial today. Or visit their website at fluteforyou.com, where you can check out their instrument selection online. Follow the Flute Store through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter for the latest news and updates. The Korinne Smith Music Company is truly your one-stop flute shop.
With my role in particular, I mean, it's artist. My official title is European Artist in Residence.
Okay.
Haynes have had an artist in residence since about 1918, and it's a succession of flutists that are in post and that are there to advise and to work and frankly to play the instruments and to promote them in an official capacity. And that's been a historical fact. I'm the first one based in Europe. I'm not the first European, but I'm the first one who's based in Europe. And so my job, it's just sort of like, well, if there is the social media, there's obviously liaising with all the non-domestic, so the non-US dealers all around the world. They all tend to be very specialist outfits. They're all high-end woodwind or maybe even flute specialists in their countries. And so again, you get to talk to interesting people as well. And most of my dealers, I'll greet them with a hug normally. That's sort of normal because everyone has sort of become friends. And so there's also liaison with all the artists and the young artists. I sort of started the Haynes Young Artist Program back in, I guess, 2016, simply because we were in a situation where somebody, it was Chloe Ellen Jones, she had won the British Flute Society competition playing on a Haynes, and I was just like, I want to celebrate this. I want to sort of we should have like a young artist thing. And so that's how that started. And it's now become a much more established official thing. And it was because I sort of thought, wow, that would have been super useful whenever I was that age. I would have loved to have had the backing and the support and the information and the knowledge and all the resources of an amazing flute company like that. That would be amazing. I would have loved that. That's why I wanted to start that. And then performing and teaching as a Haynes artist, that's in my contract, so it's, and so that's all part of the job. And it's what, and by performing at a high level internationally, as a soloist, as a chamber musician, as a recording artist, an orchestral, a composer, an arranger, and doing all this at a high level and being in demand is able to sort of give me the say. It gives me a platform in the industry to be able to say, no, actually, you should try these. And when people try the instruments, and then you just have to let the instruments go, because like the instruments get played, and they're like, well, this is ridiculous. Yes, please. Which is that sort of thing, because it needed somebody who's in that market to go, no, like try this seriously, try this. Okay. And if it's a trusted person, then people will try it, and then it's up to the instruments. Like I said, the instruments are ridiculous. So so that's why it works quite well.
Kind of like what Korinne said, the instruments kind of just sell themselves just because of the craftsmanship and just the stability and the beautiful voice and the resonance. It's like you don't have to really sell it to people because it's an amazing instrument. It's built beautifully. And so, like you say, Gareth, too, just having somebody behind the instrument that people can trust, right? And say, no, really, try this instrument. And if it's a good fit, then it's a good fit. No, thank you for talking about your job in detail. And Blair, can you talk about like what your job entails?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as Gareth was going. I think my job now and what the actual job description when I was hired are worlds apart.
Okay.
But the sort of like two worlds that I was hired to exist in were customer service. So as we've established, Gareth lives in France and Korinne lives in Rochester. And that meant that before me, there was no one doing customer service, sales, that sort of stuff actually at the shop. So that was a big requirement, or like kind of the requirement of my job and me coming on board was I got to move to New England and work in the shop so that there's someone actually in the workshop, sort of between the sales team and the public and the manufacturers, and like just kind of, customer service in and out, that sort of thing. And then the other half was be on the sales team and, do shows, help with appointments and trials and customer relations and that sort of stuff. I still do all that, yes, but I feel like, again, back to jumping on trains and not saying no to things, I sort of see my job as whatever questions need answered or whoever needs something done that doesn't directly fall under their job description. It's me. And it kind of falls under that customer service, get everything done sort of realm. So I'm, in addition to this last weekend was 4 weekends straight of being on the road for sales shows. So going to different festivals and manning the booth there and actually doing the straight sales side of things. But in addition to that, I'm our primary shipper and receiver. So all the packaging that goes in and out, that's me. Anyone who needs, like, people call in with, Haynes is 135 years old and we have over 50,000 handmade serial numbers. So people often call in wanting information on their personalized serial number and, the history and maybe an insurance letter, that sort of thing. That's me. As we're recording this tomorrow, I have an appointment at the shop with one of our artists and one of our dealers. So that's back on sort of the sales side of things, but also a little bit of artist engagement. Anyone who books a tour to come through the shop, I'm the one who takes you around and tells you the Haynes history and introduces you to all the makers. If you book a tour, you get to meet Joy, Avon, and David, who we heard from in a recent episode. And, you get to hear that whole process and see it up close. And then as we go on, I'm starting to, do more, some product photography and more social media stuff with Gareth, just because, again, I'm the only one in the shop. So if there's content that's coming from the shop, someone has to capture it. Someone has to walk around to someone's bench and say, hey, what are you working on? Can I take a picture of that? We need some content for today's, stories or in next week's Workshop Wednesday post or, anything like that. So Gareth will often send me a message and say, hey, I need blah, blah, blah. Can we put this on social media? And yeah, so I work with him on that and the social media aspect of things. So it's sort of a catch-all is my job. Sales, marketing, customer service. What do you need done? I can make it happen. That's kind of me.
Superman. I love it. And what you two gentlemen are also highlighting is just these different hats that you wear. And I resonate so much with your guys' career because I feel the same way, like these different hats, being an entrepreneur, teacher, flutist, podcaster, things like that. But it all comes together, right? And I'm kind of curious, and Blair, you can talk about this, and Gareth, maybe you can offer some feedback also. But that is, how do you, Blair, switch from one hat to the other so seamlessly well?
Well, if it looks seamless, then you're flattering me because it doesn't always feel seamless.
Okay.
You have to have the ability to just have 16 balls in the air and juggle all of them flawlessly with one hand while answering the phone with the other hand.
Perfect. Yes.
And that's sort of something that I got good at in my master's program. So Korinne mentioned David Cutler before. I also worked with him. I took his classes. I was one of his grad assistants for a couple of years. And he very much operates in the sort of way of like, throw a ball at you, and before you've even caught it, he's throwing another one at you. And it's just learning by doing is the best way. And that's one of the biggest things I took from my time with David was just to figure it out,
Yeah.
Try something and figure it out. And you just learn how to keep things going and add another ball. You've got your 15 here and someone throws you another one. And then it's just part of the mix. And you get better at it as it goes on. But it does take some concentration, and it is tiring some days just mentally because, every day is different. And that's part of the fun also, is that every day is different and it's not always the same thing every single day. And I'm going to go back to what Gareth said too. Also, just be enthusiastic about it. I love the challenge of anything that comes across my desk or my inbox and, the problem solving aspect of it. And just because it's all related to Haynes and flute and music and just that whole nerdy world, I'm really excited about it. And that sort of fuels me. It's just, I don't know what this is, but sure, let's have a smile and figure it out,
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, Blair, that I'm hearing you say too is like, with that enthusiasm and with that curiosity and willing to try these different things out, those traits and being trained like on the job, like you're juggling those 15, throw in the 16th ball, figure it out. Those different skill sets that you have in one hat, though, what I find in my career is they feed into the other hat so beautifully well. The more I do social media managing for Korinne Smith, the more I then know how to be that much more articulate to my students, right? Or being a podcaster and having an idea from beginning to end of how I want the conversation to kind of go in my head. And I have an outline, kind of like our musical map, but then through it, there's going to be improvisation. I'm not going to be able to know in advance that Blair is going to say this really cool thing about jumping trains, but being in the moment and feeding off of that energy and all of y'all's energy, it's magical, right? And then so being a podcaster feeds into like my artistic voice as a flutist. And so I'm pretty sure you feel the same way about that too,
Yeah,
how the different hats
over time
help.
and the more the patterns develop, right, over time, and you start to see parallels and the same maybe 3 or 4 macro skills that you can tweak and apply to whatever micro situation is happening in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And Korinne, let's talk about your job and what that entails.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I feel like my team here, none of our job titles actually encompass what we actually do on a daily basis. I think the Wm.S. Haynes company, as large of a company that it is viewed at in the industry, we are a really small operation, extremely small. So the three of us is working on the sales side and customer service side and artists and everything else it's really between the three of us. It's a lot. So I'm the sales manager for the company, which means I oversee domestic and international sales for the company. Gareth is in charge of the international side in terms of dealership relationships and artist relationships. However, sometimes we overlap. So a lot of our jobs do overlap each other. And there are times where, situations happen where either of us need to be out and we can swoop right in and be in that position and help each other out. But I am really overseeing a lot of the domestic sales for the company and those relationships here in the US and Canada, also overseeing artist relationships as well. I'm kind of what I would say, I'm working more on just the vision of the company and making sure we have a wonderful vision and culture. And that we just got finished working on our 5-year plan, that's kind of been overwhelming for me, but so exciting. So we're going to actually be talking about it in our meeting here after, guys. So, my most favorite part of this job, other than, the ridiculous spreadsheets that I have to look at, making sure that we hit our goals and our numbers every month, is leading a team that also sees that vision and working with these people that are I just feel like over the many years that I've known Haynes, again, I've been with the company for 8 years, but really with Haynes for almost 3, we have a team that is just dynamic. And it's really fitting in so beautifully, like puzzle pieces. And we're all moving together on that train, the same pace. And some of us, we're very much like a family. We want to make this product first, or we want to work on, we have different objectives, but we're all super enthusiastic. And so I've got to take all that information and put it together and just like bring this team together to really see out our vision and make this company, honestly, the best flute company there is. We believe that, but we have to make all the other flutists believe that. So that's my job in a nutshell.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm so glad that you highlighted the word family, Korinne, because like just seeing how like as Korinne is talking, Gareth and Blair, they're like smiling and nodding and supporting you and vice versa. Like this entire time during this hour, I just see how much you guys mutually respect each other and the love that you have for each other and just the support that you have for one another. And that was the energy that I got from talking with the Haynes Flute Makers team. Oh my goodness, the three of them are just like so giddy and so enthusiastic and just about like the flutist and the modern day flutist and really serving them and giving them this beautifully crafted instrument so that way they can really sing. And I see the same passion that you guys have as well for that flutist, like, and for our community. And I thank you for that because that's unmatched, and you're right. Like a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't know until, there's a beautiful picture. Gareth is holding up a fantastic picture on his iPad, hence the family. And, you're right, Korinne, like I didn't even know until like you and I were getting to know each other better and the team better. I didn't know what a small operation you guys had in the sense of the three of you being on the sales team. That blew my mind because in my brain, I'm thinking there's like 20 people on this because you guys make it almost seem bigger than life. And you do such a fantastic job that, in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, there's like 20 people on this team, but you're like, this is us. And actually in a way, like having that intimacy, I'm sure there's a lot of pros to having it set up that way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the team will be growing. I'll just say that. Keep a lookout the next 5 years. I think we have really big ambitions. Basically, world domination in the flute world is the hope. So that will require a larger team, which we're very excited about.
World domination.
Heidi, yeah. You're right about the intimacy, though, because for the listeners, the picture that Gareth was holding up was the three of us, the sales team, the morning after the NFA convention closed in Chicago this last year. We all went to breakfast and, hung out and had a last little hangout before we all went back to our corners of the world. And yeah, just the fact that it's the three of us, that we talk 5, 6, 10 times a day, sometimes, whether it's, actual video calls or Teams messages or emails back and forth. And we're good friends too. And that, that's something really special about Haynes, not just the sales team, but the whole company. Everybody really likes each other. Some people have been lifelong friends, some of the people in the shop. I'm the newest within this last year, but I felt right at home as soon as I walked in because everyone's just super friendly. Gareth, going back to what you said about creating that environment and that culture, everyone was so welcoming. Everyone is just the best of friends, and we make a dang good flute too while we're at it.
Yeah, you do. I was telling the flute making team how I believe it was Joy, and she was talking about like the scale and just really like from one tone to the next and just having this tone equality from like low B up to super high C. And I told her, I said, yeah, as a flute teacher of, teaching professionally for 20 years, every single time I hear a Haynes, I'm always blown away by that tone equality and just the seamlessness of the sound and things like that. And so, yes, you do make a darn good flute. Shoot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I know you guys have a team meeting after this, and I don't want to intrude on that time, but I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath you either. If there's anything that you want to share with the listeners about the Haynes company that you think that they aren't aware of, or anything that you want to highlight as we're wrapping up this conversation, feel free to share.
One of the interesting things, the different things about Haynes that I think is worth noting is that these flutes aren't easy, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like these flutes are the most interesting instruments that I've ever played. And it was it took me absolutely by surprise, and this is what drew me to these instruments. Is it just like it's the possibilities and how it feels like. I feel like I can do everything here, and I feel like there's just these possibilities. So it's just like, because I think before I was looking for like loud, obviously loud, soft sometimes, and just sort of even and easy and everything else. And then suddenly when I got this, I got these flutes. I'm just like, this is inspiring and challenging and fascinating and motivating. And every time I feel like my flute is saying, what about this dynamic? Or what about this color? And I feel, and it's honestly, and I'm not the only one. I've spoken at length to some of our artists, and it's just this idea of being challenged by your instrument to be a more interesting player. And that I've never, because I think everyone's just after, I want like big, and I want like easy and huge and beautiful. And it's just like, no, I want fascinating. Because once you have something, it's like with a person. If someone is just pretty, you know what I mean? But if they're fascinating and if they are engaging, and if you find layer after layer, that I think if whenever you're trying some Haynes flutes, I think look for that. Look for that, and also look for like it's the presence that you can find at every dynamic. That was also being startling. I'll never forget the first orchestral concert I played on my 2015 flute that I got. I'll never forget it. It was in De Montfort Hall in Leicester, which is a beautiful barrel-shaped, barrel-vaulted ceiling. And I sat in the principal flute chair, and I remember I played a piano, just a nice piano middle A, and I heard it bounce off the back wall at me. And I was like, right, okay, this is different. This is like a different sport that I had just never encountered before. And I've been playing the flute. I barely remember even learning the flute because I've been playing so long. And this was just like, okay, this is different. So I think look for those things whenever you're trying some flutes. And I think you'll be in for a very interesting, satisfying, challenging time.
I love that, especially the analogy of someone can be pretty, but as you get to know them, the levels and the layers and the interest and everything you described, I love that.
Well, we're all beautiful. Let's face it. No, I'm just like, we're all gorgeous. Let's be clear. We're all wonderful, but we're also fascinating.
Yeah, there you go. And on that note, Korinne, what would you like to add?
No, I think Gareth put it beautifully regarding the Haynes sound. I think everybody has heard about this legendary sound, and how do we really put that to words? And I think he did that really eloquently there. I'd like to just talk about the company, like as a whole. I think it's very similar to that Haynes sound. It is more about coming kind of full circle to our conversation. It's about the relationships, right? We're creating this amazing flute, and there's all these characters and beautiful colors, and like you got to get to know that flute. It's worth it. It's worth it to get to know that Haynes sound. Same thing as it is to get to know our company. The more layers you pull back, the more beauty you're going to find in the people that are making your flute and the people that are selling the flutes. Every artist, I think, that we have encountered, it's just like they feel like they are a part of a family. And with that good energy moving forward, like I really feel like we're just going to be unstoppable. We just got to make more flutes. So, right now I'm very proud to say we're a year behind not behind, but sold out for the year on custom production. And so we're very proud of that. But I'm also like, let's go. I want to sell more. So I think we're all feeling that right now. But yes, it's a wonderful company to work for. I encourage, if any listeners here are interested in flute making or repair or interested in the industry at all, please keep a lookout on our website for open vacancies, because we do have some available. It's a company that is just going to keep going and growing. So I'm very happy and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And Blair.
I think I can't say anything more or new about the Haynes family that hasn't already been said. I would just be harping on an established point at that point. I think I'm sort of in a unique place because like I said, I'm, only a year and a half, couple years post school. So I kind of want to leave just a little nugget of advice for any listeners who are, maybe in school or, struggling just after school to figure out what they want to do. And that's just, it sounds so cheesy, but keep an open mind and challenge your own perceptions. And that's coming from personal experience. When I applied for this job and I knew it was a part or a lot of, sales on this, on the job, I didn't know the first thing about sales. I had never seen myself in a sales job growing up or in college as a young adult. I couldn't tell you what sales meant.
Mm-hmm.
And come to figure out, it was just because I was thinking about it wrong. I thought it was, the go door to door, knock on someone's door, get the door slammed in your face, and then go to the next door and hand out a flyer. That's not it. It's, to me, sales, it's just people. And we keep coming back to that. But it's customer relationships, it's artist relationships, it's relationships within the company. It's just talking to people and meeting them where they're at, which is so much fun because you get to explore that person and their needs and what they are bringing to the table. And then you find out how you as a company or you as a sales team or you as a manufacturer can meet them where their needs are. And then that's where the real fun starts. That's, creating the partnership together. So challenge your own perspectives and challenge your own perceptions and pick a train, jump on it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We already have today's podcast episode's title figured out. Find your train, jump on it. It's, literally. And all the social media, there's going to be like a choo-choo train on everything. I'm so excited. And Blair, kid you not, like great minds think alike. As a host, I always try to think of like, I'm having experts come into this space and share a space with me. How can I pick their brains where we are going to bring incredible value to the listeners? And that right there about sales, I'm using air quotes, sales, could be a topic for a whole nother part 2 discussion. And that was one thing that I thought, if we had enough time, would I be able to talk to them about how sales really isn't sales? Because it's like what I learned as a businesswoman these past 3 years, I didn't learn how to sell anything to people in school. I learned how to play my flute. And that's a problem when you go into business. If you're not selling, then you are a hobbyist. And we can't have that because you can't put a roof over your head. But what I have found through sales, Blair, is what you said. And really, you're using the word enroller. You're an enroller. You are inviting people into your circle to see if you can help them bridge the gap of where they are pain-wise into a solution. And I think what you're saying too, Blair, is like a lot of musicians don't realize this, but they probably are better enrollers than what they give themselves credit for. Because different characteristics of being an enroller in my mind's eye, you guys are the experts, not me. But what I have found to be true is like to be a good enroller, you have to be curious. You have to be willing to listen to the person. What you said earlier, Blair, meet them where they are at. And these are tools, or not really tools, these are skills that we learned as musicians in the practice room, on stage. And so, to bring this conversation full circle, if you are a listener and you are like, I graduated, what do I do now? Like, what am I going to do? And you are really considering like, something similar to what Gareth, Korinne, and Blair have in these jobs that they hold, don't be dismayed and think, oh, well, I didn't learn sales. No, like what you've learned in music school, you could bring those skills to the table and you probably would be a powerful enroller from, who you are as a musician. So I thought to throw that in there because literally that could be a whole nother podcast episode. But I'm so glad you brought it up because I want people to feel encouraged to look at that as a possibility and not be passive and go, oh, that's not for me. Korinne.
Yeah, I just, how I was talking about my interview into the industry earlier, and I said that could be another separate podcast. And maybe you can cut and use whatever you want out of this. But I think that's what got me this job was applying what I learned in music school to the interview. And the question that they asked me was, And this was the vice president of, he was director of sales at Eastman at the time. And he was really stoic. And he comes to me at a lunch and he goes, okay, Korinne, so you're a teacher and a performer. What makes you think you can sell musical instruments? And I said, okay, well, as a teacher, I need to get students to want to study with me. As a performer, I need to get people to sit in those seats, buy tickets, and want to come listen to me play. Give me an instrument. Let me read up on it. I'm an academic. I can easily, study that, but I'm selling myself. I sell myself on a daily basis as a flutist and a teacher. I can sell musical instruments. That's easy. So it's applying those skills that we learned to sales. And there you go.
Boom. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for contributing to this conversation. Thank you so much for bringing that value to the listeners. And if you are a listener and you want to reach out to either one of these three fantastic people, I will put their links below in the show notes. And if you have any questions, I'm guessing, Korinne, because you hinted at it, right? Soon, maybe in the near future, there may be job opportunities available through Haynes. So feel free to reach out to either one of them and Korinne, because they do not bite. They want to see you succeed. And as you can see from our conversation, they put people first. So reach out to them if you ever need anything from the Haynes team. Attention Flute 360 listener, are you ready to take your flute playing and career to the next level? Have you ever desired to be a part of a flute community but didn't know where to look? Well, look no further, because the Flute 360 Accelerator Program is now open. This evergreen offering allows you to join at any time and become a part of something bigger than yourself. With access to a mastermind or masterclass, monthly book club, and pocket coaching, you'll receive the support and guidance you need to reach your goals. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to accelerate your success as a flutist. To enroll in the Flute 360 Accelerator Program today, click the link below in the show notes. See you soon. Let's talk about flute.